knowing this is actually the right species, this is the right part of the species. From there, making sure it's bioavailable, that your body can actually use it.
Hello, and welcome to the Rise Again podcast. My name is Dr. Peter Risenen. My passion is people, harnessing their potential and the positive impact that makes on our world. On this podcast, I interview guests who share their journey of tapping into their resilience, strength, fortitude, and mental toughness required to rise from the ashes and live a fulfilling life. My purpose became very clear to me after I experienced a traumatic brain injury and a near-death experience in 2010. Months after that accident, I embarked on a bicycle journey from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean, 4,400 miles over 55 days across the United States and Canada, from Washington State to Maine, in a quest that started me on my path doing what I love. To be surrounded by God's created nature and the people He created to give me insight on my quest to live my best life and help others create that for themselves. I believe we all grow tremendously through our adventures and misadventures. My ventures in hormone optimization, integrative medicine, counseling, my own marriage, and the fostering and adoption of my beautiful son have allowed me to create a different future, untethered from my past, allowing me to live the life I've always wanted, to pursue what matters, and more importantly, to help others do the same by working with them to create a resilient mind and body, as well as a purpose-filled spirit needed to live a life of thriving. Welcome to the journey. It's time to rise again. If any of these guests speak to you, do the next best thing and reach out to them. Each guest has a wisdom that only they can have from their own unique experience. Your journey awaits. Let's get going and start taking that next step together. Through the work I do as a medical director of a men's health and hormone optimization clinic in Arizona, as well as the medical director for a nonprofit catering to providing the best of integrative care to military veterans, foster and adoptive families, people experiencing low and fixed income, and health professional students in training, I love what I do. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Let's all do the work and follow the steps to rise again. Hey guys, welcome back for a very exciting 79th episode of the Rise Again podcast. Back with our very own Danielle Broida from Four Sigmatic Mushrooms. She is awesome. We've had her on the podcast a couple other times. You guys may remember those fantastic episodes we have had. Her and the founder of Four Sigmatic Mushrooms, Tero Isokaupila, have written an amazing book called Healing Adaptogens. I'm going to be giving away some of these books in my office. And you guys, as you know, I'm such a huge proponent of Four Sigmatic's products. As Danielle and I talk about on the podcast today, and as I mentioned in the podcast, the most expensive supplement you'll ever buy is one that doesn't work. This is not about supplements, this podcast, but I just do want to put a plug in for Four Sigmatic and the products that they have because they are fantastic. So I'm going to have a link at the bottom of the page if you want to go and you want to order some of their products. Feel free to do so. But this podcast episode is really about their book, Healing Adaptogens. So we talk about adaptogens, we define them, what are the benefits you're going to get from adaptogens, how to use them. We talk about their three-pronged approach: defend, performance, and restoration. So those three things are in part 2 of the book. And then in part 3, we talk about the shopping guide and creating a routine around adaptogens. So there is something that lies in this podcast for you. Some of the takeaways from it, we talk about stress and how when you actually apply adaptogenic herbs or mushrooms into your life, really what happens is everything starts to get better because adaptogens are non-specific, they're normalizing, and they're non-toxic. These 3 things make adaptogens amazing. Now, a lot of people have heard about ashwagandha. Well, there's like 30 to 50 adaptogens out there, right? So when we're going to talk about some of those adaptogens, this book is really going to highlight those for you guys. I definitely recommend this. It's the definitive guide to using super herbs and mushrooms for your body's restoration, defense, and performance. So let's get into today's podcast with Danielle Broida. How are you, Danielle? It's been a little bit.
It really has been. I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, it's good to have you on. People love your infectious energy, passion, and enthusiasm for all things mycelium and herbs.
Oh,
So yeah.
happy to be here. I know, I can't believe it's like these years just fly by. Like it gets faster and faster somehow.
Right, right. I know. What's been going on in your world? You got this amazing book, and we're going to dive into that. But what else has been going on? Are you in Southern California right now?
Yeah, I moved to California. So I live in Venice now. I'm down the road from our Four Sigmatic headquarters, which is awesome. I got engaged about a month ago. So
Congrats.
lots of big, exciting things personally. And I have a nephew who just turned a year old. So it's been fun.
Wow, that's fun. Yeah, we got our boy now. We 16 months old. We didn't have him when we did our podcast last. We fostered and adopted him at
Congrats.
yeah. So it's a big deal. It was we got him at 2 weeks old, and May 1st of last year, and we adopted him this year, February 25th. He was like a little over 10 months old, and
Wow.
yes, it's amazing watching these little kids just sprout.
That's incredible. Was that in the plans or that just?
We wanted to, well, we've always wanted kids. And so then when, naturally it wasn't happening, we were kind of, time of life and whatnot. We're like, you know what, we first were on the fostering bandwagon, then we jumped over to adoption. And then we were like, you know what, let's foster because the adoption process was taking too long, and
Yeah.
fostered, got this little guy and we were able to adopt him at 10 and a half months old. So just so exciting. Yeah.
Congratulations. What's his name?
Onyx.
Onyx. Cool.
Yeah. So it's great. You've had a lot of things going on. And I really want to dive into your book here because this book is kind of like, I don't know, I look at it as like a staple on the bookshelf of anybody who is really kind of wanting to jump into health and wellness and learn more about themselves. Just this is a pivotal project that you put together.
Thank you. I hope it can be that. These plants and mushrooms are so powerful. There's so much history to them. They have clinical trials. They have like all the ingredients that people are looking for to really trust in turning to a natural substance for their healing in whatever avenue they're looking for, whether it's mental health, focus, clarity, more physical performance, beauty from the inside out, libido. They just have so much to offer, and they're accessible to us for really the first time in history. The last couple of years, we actually can order them on Amazon and get next day delivery of like incredible, like South American cacao or Ayurvedic Indian ashwagandha root. Like these are so accessible. And I feel like the big missing link is just that education and really connecting people. So the goal is that this book can be that bridge, right, between where people are and getting them to a life where they're using adaptogens every day.
Yeah, we use a lot. I use adaptogens in my practice a lot. And, it seems like when I ask people what they're already taking when, doing an intake, you're in a perfect place and a perfect time because a lot of people just are just buying things and trying things, and which is okay, but they're not doing it in a focused methodology or something that would be very specific to what their body type is and what their needs are. Never has there been a time I feel like where, people are being hit from every angle with all kinds of different projects and focusing and just actually being intentional about things and having lower stress levels. I mean, it's critical.
Yeah, it's top of mind for so many of us. And we have less tools than ever before to deal with all of these things, the stressors, we'll start with stressors, like the internal, external stressors. It's huge. And that's often why people turn towards some of these mushrooms and plants that we'll get into. But, when I think about stressor, it's like pushing our body off balance. And so it takes energy to get us back into a state of equilibrium where all of the other organs are functioning properly and we have energy and focus. And we basically need nutrients to be able to get us from that off-kilter place back into the homeostasis. Our food is less nutrient dense than it's ever been. There's microplastics everywhere. There's toxins in the air. It's like our body is really deficient in the tools it needs to help us bounce back. And I think that's where these plants and mushrooms are such heavy hitters right now because they're so freaking nutrient dense, right? These are the most
Right.
phytochemically like complex foods on the planet. Like let's replenish us.
So we got this book that, so the book's title, Healing Adaptogens. Love it. I love the images in it. I mean, everything from the outlines, the chapters, just the way it's broken down, and kind of went through some of that. Really excited about how you and Dero have put it together. Really a neat book. I was just going to say, as far as adaptogens go, I mean, I routinely use ashwagandha and trifle. in my practice, right? So those are two things that I use very commonly because I'm in the men's health space right now. And I just feel like guys in general, they're working hard to provide for their families, their communities, maybe their country, and they're just working so hard. And it's like, hey, how can we restore some of that just balance in their life? And this is what you were talking about with adaptogens. So why don't you define for the audience what an adaptogen is? I know there's some very specific things, and why don't you just tell us what those things are that make something an adaptogen?
The word was actually coined in 1947. It comes from the Latin word adaptere, which means to fit or to adjust. But it's important to know that before, 70 years ago, we were using these adaptogens as humans in cultures all across the world. So the umbrella terminology of adaptogens is relatively new in the West. And yet, the history and longevity of these plants being allies to human health is far, far older than the adaptogens. But how we classify adaptogens, there's about 30 of them. We go through 21 in the book that we feel are really relevant for what people are needing and looking for support with today. But there's 3 classifications that qualify these plants and mushrooms as adaptogens. The first is that they're non-toxic. This is really cool. There's not a amount you can take where you then experience an overdose or a toxic load or start experiencing negative effects. They're more like foods in this way. This also means they're tonics. They're meant to be taken every day to more build and nourish the system as opposed to treat a disease or an ailment. So they're all non-toxic. They're all non-specific, which is really interesting. So this can get into when you were mentioning like choosing the right herbs and mushrooms for your body type, but non-specific even takes it further where in the West, we're so used to taking something, whether it's natural or pharmaceutical, because we have a headache or because we have a stomach ache or because we can't sleep. Adaptogens don't target one system or one organ of the body. They actually are working on multiple areas simultaneously. And that's kind of where a lot of their magic lies. So they're non-specific. It's like you might take lion's mane because you've heard it's a nootropic. You're like, cool, I want all this focus and support with memory. But then your digestion gets a lot better, or you start sleeping better, or you realize you're less stressed, right? So they're non-specific. They're working in multiple areas. The third is that they're normalizing. This is really cool. It's basically, think of this like a cruise control or a seesaw. So they're really working to create this sense of balance, whether it's on our immune systems, our nervous systems, cardiovascular systems. There are many different compounds that are at play. A way that I like to think about it is our adaptogens have phytocompounds, so different constituents in them that act as either a gas or a brake effect. Cacao is a really fun example of this. A lot of people don't consider cacao an adaptogen. We argue that it is in this book. Cacao is a fun one because it has theobromine, right? So a lot of people think it has caffeine. It's kind of caffeine's sister molecule, similar, but very different. But it can be kind of like stimulating or energizing. Cacao also contains a ton of magnesium, right? Our cellular relaxer. So that's like the brake and the theobromine the gas. And so depending on where you're at when you ingest the cacao or the adaptogen, you might either feel a little more lifted, a little more energized, like getting into some workflow, cacao flow, or it might really help relax you and calm your system and help you fall asleep. And so each of them have this normalizing action where there's compounds working in opposition, and whichever one is more needed, we can say, by your body, maybe there's a deficiency, or that will have a louder effect in the body. So, every body that takes it will feel slightly different. So they're all non-toxic, they're all normalizing, they're all non-specific.
I have so many people who will come and they'll talk about, well, I've got some digestive issues, whatever else. And so my go-to now is, instead of talking about specific foods or whatever else, it's always like, let's talk about your stress levels. Because I found, like you said, with so many people that, okay, maybe they have a tension headache, right? Well, they're stressed out. Well, then they've got the headache, and then they've got the digestive issues because they're in sympathetic overdrive. They're just like the seesaw's kiltered maybe a little bit more towards anxiety. They're stressed out. Maybe they're thinking about the next shoe that's going to drop, on something. And so getting them into a space with some adaptogens, they'll often ask and I'm like, this is God's gift to mankind. Like there's no way to really overdose on this stuff for the most part. When I talk about, you can take anywhere between this and this quantity. I mean, this is as a starting spot, and go to town. Like if that feels good and you're having a really stressful day, you can take more. That's fine. That's the neat thing about adaptogens, I find, is that, like you talk about the normalizing effect. I mean, herbs and mushrooms combined, like the effects are just magnanimous, really, when you're working with people. So I find
Yeah.
that this group is the best bunch of herbs to be using with anybody because, like you said, the non-specific, this is a little different, like you said, for people to think about. I mean, we're used to taking something very specific for something very specific.
Right.
Why not start with this, see how much gets better? Like, this is how I talk about adaptogens. Let's just start off on these and we're going to check up in a little bit after you've been on these and after everything's kind of, let's see where your body's normalized to. And then we can start treating any other dysfunctions.
Such a similar philosophy. It's like so often we get attached to the symptoms and we're like, no, I have headaches. Or I have chronic digestive issues, or I get sick every change of season. And people just really want to address that thing. That's how we've been programmed in the West. That's the way Western medicine works, right? It's allopathic. So it does take like a different mental framework and a lot of trust, I think, in the practitioner. When I'm like, okay, I hear that you have headaches, or I hear that you have this laundry list of symptoms. We're going to support your stress. We're going to support your gut health and your microbiome with these mushrooms and this ashwagandha. You're like, what the heck? I want to address my headache. But if we do that and the body's still in this underlying state of stress, the symptoms are just going to shift, right? Like maybe that headache will go away, but then it'll turn into something else. Yeah, adaptogens are so cool because they are really helping to clear the fog and be like, okay, after the stress is supported, or after some of these baseline functions of the body have been replenished with like the wild amount of vitamins and minerals and amino acids and polysaccharides and all these epic compounds in our adaptogens.
They're so epic.
Then you can say, okay, do you still have headaches? Cool. Let's try to figure out where that's coming from. Right. But it's, I think it takes a little bit longer in the beginning. And then ideally someone doesn't have those headaches for the next 5 years, if they give it that initial patience to start allowing their bodies to adjust with the help. Really, I think of these adaptogens like allies. Like as humans, we've always relied on these species and others to support us and make sure that we're healthy and we're not just surviving, we're thriving and evolving. And so it's an exciting time. People are remembering and wanting to bring them back on board.
Was starting off with these guys when I'm treating them, one of the things I recommend an adaptogen to every single one of them, right? Or adaptogens. It's amazing how many guys will say, I was doing the other protocol before, whether it's hormone replacement or whatever else, but I have to tell you that those extra things that I'm taking have made all the difference. They will tell me that and they'll be like, I am absolutely, whatever I do, those will never be leaving my arsenal.
Incredible.
Yeah, the testimonials I get on adaptogens all the time are just, it's fantastic. So why don't we break down even the book a little bit? I love the parts. You got a part 1, 2, and 3. And in 1, you've done that. You defined adaptogen. You kind of go into it a little bit more in detail. Part 2, adaptogens for whole and body health. That was really neat to hear. And kind of what we're talking about right now, like it addresses so many different systems, right? Because we are whole. Like we don't exist in these separate different symptoms. They're all just manifestation.
Yeah, we're an ecosystem.
Right.
Part 1, is really this introduction. There's so much hype around the word adaptogens. And what I found is the resources that exist are either these big, heady textbooks that only like doctors or herbalists are going to really get into and understand, or there's these blogs on the internet that are like these short facts that aren't really comprehensive. A lot of it isn't true. And so the goal in part 1 is meeting somewhere in the middle and having it be definitive yet accessible. So this is what they are. But if you have no medical background, or you've never heard of these, or you've never taken a plant medicine, it doesn't matter. Should be understandable and really speak to you where you're at. And that's like a really good foundation to lay. Okay, what are these? Where are they coming from? The history. And then as you mentioned, part 2 is really digging into each of these 21 species that we chose. And how we broke them down is we started with a little fun fact page that I think of as the dating profile of that adaptogen. So it's really cute. It's like
Love
its full
it.
name. What's the Latin name? Its nickname. So all these common names around the world, which is so important because in different countries, like I lived in Asia, as you know, for years, and they call all of our different ingredients like a totally different name, right? So there's these different names, and yet the Latin name helps us say, okay, this is the same species all over the world. And then it has these nicknames. We go into the energetics, which speaks to how to choose it for your body type. And this is all like super simply laid out. Top 3 benefits. This was probably the hardest part because they have so many benefits. And yet, in order to make it accessible, we've got to speak to the modern mindset of somehow choosing a medicine or a botanical for X, Y, or Z. So it's like, okay, it's mostly helpful with these 3 things, but keep an open mind because it might help with something beyond this list. What's really fun, we added a best friends category, which these are, as you mentioned, when you synergize them together, there's so much more that can happen. And so
define that synergy. What does synergy mean? Just to kind of give that, just define synergy. Yeah.
So synergy is when you combine a compound of some sorts. It can be a vitamin, a mineral, another plant with the original plant or mushroom or compound that you're trying to use. And the effects of those are greater than either one of them on their own. A lot of people have heard of, combining black pepper with turmeric, and it increases the anti-inflammatory properties of that curcumin by 1,000-fold. So that's synergy. Or ashwagandha has these really wonderful fat-soluble vitamins. And so if you drink a little nut milk or, in India, they'll add ghee to their boiled ashwagandha tea, it will help the body utilize those fat-soluble vitamins, right? And you get more out of the same amount. And so this is great for people on a budget or people that are like, I just want to take a little bit to start. You can actually use a lot less and experience equal, if not greater benefits by combining, by synergizing with other ingredients that help it become more bioavailable to the body.
Beautiful. I like that. I've always thought of just synergy as a simple 2 + 2 = 7. It's kind of like, wait a minute. It's just so simple to just see like, wow, there's a profound difference in each of the separate, entities. But when you combine the two, it's like you get this crazy increase in benefits. So it's good to see that that's in the book too, because I think people will often start with one and be so, well, if we just try this one. And it's like, but you might actually experience 100-fold increase in certain benefits if you take it with something else. So that's good that you laid that out.
So that's our little fun fact. That's like if you only have 2 seconds and you want to be like, okay, what is, I don't know, I have the book in front of me. Like, what am I turning to? Brain and focus chapter, mucuna for, right? So we have this fun fact page, everything about mucuna. Then we go into the history. So each of these species has been the top ingredient in the bioregion that they're from. Sometimes I felt repetitive writing this. I'm like, this is the most sacred leaf in Ayurveda, talking about Tulsi or holy basil or reishi. This is the most revered mushroom in all of traditional Chinese medicine. Or cacao, this is so powerful. It's used as a currency and it's valued more than gold. And it's like, but that's the reality, which each of these species, where they're from, they were so with So it's important to hear that history of use. And it also validates some of the medicine within them because we have hundreds, with some of these ingredients, thousands of years of anecdotal evidence of use. Like someone experiencing taking moringa leaf and saying, oh, I experienced these brain benefits or these stress relieving benefits. And then they pass that on to their children and then their grandchildren. And they all documented and wrote down this use case for thousands of years. So that's really cool to go into.
What's the problem that you see with double-blind placebo-controlled trials? I have to talk about this because, I know a lot of people who will say, well, that's kind of their argument with a lot of this is, well, where's the double-blind placebo-controlled trials? And, what's your response to that? I mean, one of mine, I'll just kind of minus, well, life doesn't exist in a vacuum. We have a lot of things going on. What's your thoughts about trials? And I love anecdotal evidence. I mean, I think it's so powerful to get those. So tell me a little bit about that, your mindset.
There's many ways that these gold standard trials even fall short. We did include several gold standard trials, so the double-blind placebo-controlled for every species and every benefit to really back that up for people that need it. But these species, they have hundreds of compounds working together. So we can go through, there's a list of problems with clinical trials. Whatever that ingredient was used in the clinical trial, it might be an ashwagandha from one season, and have certain ingredients based on the soil and the water conditions in that season. But plants are constantly changing and evolving. And so there could be someone else or the next crop or the next year or from a different bioregion in the world where, let's say that ashwagandha root was exposed to more stressors, for example. And then the plant creates these really powerful compounds because maybe a storm came through that year and it has all these amazing compounds, which then we can ingest and we can use those to support our nervous system and all these normalizing effects. You can't really control and say, this is ashwagandha and this is how it's going to be used forever. So with the plant itself. The second is with the people that are taking them. And we can get into bio-individuality and every human being either more warm, more cold, more moist, more dry. This has always been recognized in traditional systems of medicine, TCM, Ayurveda, many folk lineages, where if we both take the same ashwagandha root and I have a different constitution than you, I live in a different place, my body is going to synergize with that, maybe really well, maybe not. And I think of this with sometimes people are like, what do you mean plant energetics and how does that work? And we think of some plants that are obvious, like a cayenne or a ginger, like these are really hot versus an aloe vera. That's really moist and cold. Right? This is hot, dry, moist, cold. So each of our bodies, let's say I live at the sea level right now. It's really humid. If I take aloe, that might not work really well for me. But when I lived in Colorado, right, or other people that live at 7,000 feet elevation, they're naturally really dry. So they're going to need a more moist plant to bring them into balance. And that's just not taken into account with the ways that we regulate a clinical trial. It's like, these are all, males from the ages of 20 to 45, and we've ruled out other variables, which then brings another point, like what else are they taking that's synergizing with that? Like, are they taking 5 cups of coffee a day, or what are they eating, or how much are they exercising? Like,
a lot of it comes down to money too. You know what I mean? A lot of double-blind placebo-controlled trials that was created by pharmaceutical industries to really be mechanistic. When a lot of our world, and this is very counter to what we're trying to do with adaptogens, right? We're not trying to be specific. This is a non-specific thing. So it doesn't even really apply to the model that exists for double-blind placebo-controlled trials. And I mean, I've heard from a lot of doctors who've been on these boards for a lot of these really big companies. It's very easy to skew data. So at the same time, it's like, you have to visit with people. I think that's where this book comes in. It's like, it's an educational piece to help people discover for their body type and for who they are, what would work well for them. It doesn't pay for you to go to PubMed and look. You're just going to get lost in studies and this and that. And a lot of it, I mean, what even applies to you, right? So going to an herbalist like yourself, who knows so much about fungi and herbs and all of this well-rounded look at health. It's like you are like the shaman in this way where you can kind of explain what's going on and you can just lay it out there for them to be able to digest. I'd had to talk about that because I feel like when people talk about research studies, you can lose a lot of benefits if you can lose so much if you just focus on, well, why not just try something? See how it works for you,
Yeah. And we need both. And it was challenging. I read through over 1,000 clinical trials to try to pull some legitimate ones and include in the book. But as you mentioned, who's funding these clinical trials? And often they're looking for an ingredient to support with a very specific disease or a cancer line or something really, really honed in the body. And so they're like, okay, how does KSM 66 and ashwagandha support this one cancer line? It's not a generalized, non-specific study. Like, this is all these people took ashwagandha and this is what happened, right? It's coming at an angle of I'm trying to create a medicine, or I'm trying to patent an isolated compound, or, I'm trying to find the answer to this one disease for my study. And so it's like you're looking for apples and you're getting bananas. You're like, okay, wait, how do I make these work? But it's important to have both. And right, it's just all different pieces of information. Yeah, depending on where you're at, I hear all the time, show me the human gold standard trials. And I want people to really believe in these species. And so if that's what it takes, it says here, this is, really the highest quality clinical trial done. And that's what's so unique about adaptogens too, is there's so many other amazing plants. And maybe there'll be, 20 plus more adaptogens added to the repertoire if the research catches up with them. But we don't just have the historical data, which we do with so many of other plants. We also have this really amazing library of research that adds to their legitimacy in the Western mindset.
Yes, it supports it. It upholds it for sure. It's so true. I think Four Sigmatic could actually probably lead the way in some of that research, even with people enrolling them in just trials. It's just like, kind of getting as much data, and you could kind of get a really well-rounded look. I mean, maybe this is far off in the future, but get all this lifestyle information about these people and just see how people perform generally. Maybe you do dial them in for their specific constitution or whatever it is. And I'm just like, wow, how cool would that be to be reading some of that?
Totally. We do like internal challenges within the brand, and I'm leading we call them our wellness challenges. And I'm leading one right now where everyone's taking a adaptogen. They're taking a Four Sigmatic product. And we do this before and after symptoms checklist. Maybe you do this in your practice. I used to do this with clients all the time, whether it was like before they did a dietary elimination or started a new supplement. And it's this really comprehensive list of like, you rate on a scale from 1 to 10, all different symptoms. So like your eyesight, your hair, your digestion, your sleep, your stress levels, and then you put it away, commit to that new practice, in this case, taking an adaptogen. And 4 to 6 weeks later, you fill in the same exact form without looking at the original, and then pull it back and compare them side to side. And it's just a really fun, but also powerful way for individuals to see, like, I'm not telling you change. Like, this is your own way of assessing your own body because you're the only one in there.
You told me before this, and this is what you're telling me now.
Exactly. And they can see it. And so, yeah, we're doing that. Today is day 2 of the challenge.
Sweet. That's great. Yeah, I need your list because, I do have one. I have one for men's health specifically that I use quite a bit. And I love the 1 to 10. I say with 1 to 10, 10 being most optimal, rate your libido, rate your strength, rate your energy, rate your stamina. And it's really fun because you can get on a call with someone and they can say, I'm doing about the same. And then you're like, okay, cool. Like, let's run through the checklist. It sounds like you're doing roughly the same, but let's verify, as subjective as it is, I still want to get your input on everything. So run through it. Sure enough, they went from a 4 to a 7. Oh yeah, I guess it's a little bit better, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, so you improved drastically. And at the end of the call, they're like, yeah, you know what? I guess I have been feeling better. It's kind of like they needed to say it and they needed to see that.
It's so true. I feel like when people get better, they forget how they were before. Like, I have seen the most wild examples of this with really, really sick clients that things get better and they literally forgot. They're like, I forgot I had migraines 4 days a week for 6 years. Totally forgot. I'm good now. What's next? I'm like, okay, let's take a moment and really honor that and celebrate where you've come. And yeah, this checklist is so great. It's actually on our Healing Adaptogens website.
Okay,
shameless
perfect.
plug, but it's a pre-order gift. Like, if you pre-order the book, you get this checklist, but I'll send it to you as well.
Oh, no, perfect. Yeah, I'll definitely put the link up for that in the show notes because I think everyone should rate themselves on all these things. I mean, you have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain by figuring out where you're at, get a little starting spot. And the thing about this is people will often say, well, I want to dial things in with my lifestyle first, or I want to feel better and then I'll take it. It's like, no. Take it right now where you're at. There's no better time than the present. Take it right now. And then you start things, maybe it's one at a time, and use something like this as a guide. You've got little checkpoints along the way. It's like, okay, at each one of these little checkpoints, maybe every 3 months or whatever it is, you retake this with whatever new lifestyle adaptogen thing you're doing, herb, mushroom addition, all these things. And ideally not change way too many things between each one. I mean, unless you're eating fast food every day and you're not taking care of yourself at all, maybe there are a lot of things to change. I think that's great. So I'll definitely put a plug in for that. You have chapter 4 and 5. And so the energy and performance, brain and focus was in the performance chapter.
Oh yeah. We kind of like, we're breaking it down by parts. And then there's also subparts and chapters within there. So I guess we can get part 3 as a shopping guide, which we'll talk about next. We have the intro, all the 21 ingredients, and then the shopping guide. But within this part 2, that's the 21 ingredients. The goal was always, okay, where are people? How do people choose whatever they're going to purchase or start incorporating it into their life? And how can we kind of gently categorize these adaptogens? It's so funny and ironic. I'm like, the whole point is they're not put in a box. But what we did, we came up with these 3 categories. So there's restoration, which is really stress support, longevity, anti-aging, kind of that restoration calming box that doesn't have strict sides and edges to the box. And then we have adaptogens to defend, which we talk about defend being a word for immunity and gut health, which are really interrelated, obviously, as well as skin, right? Defense is using our skin as our largest organ in this exterior defense. And then we have a performance category, which are like brain and focus herbs, as well as physical performance. So whether that's like athletic performance or libido. So those are kind of the ways we generally broke it down. And I just always have to make a plug, like continue to keep an open mind. Sure, if you really want a performance supporting supplement, you can start with cordyceps, but like don't be surprised if all of these other things happen, right? They're non-specific after all.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that. It helps the Western mind break things down a little bit and give them a little bit, oh, okay, like, how often do we read the table of contents and then we're like, oh, okay, what's in it? Oh, okay, perfect. I'm looking for defense right now. So you bomb into that chapter and before you know it, you're discovering more, but it's nice to have a spot to just launch from. It's just a starting point. It's not the end all be all.
Right. Meet yourself where you're at, whatever that looks like. And adaptogens are so forgiving in that way. It's like some of them actually are foods, and have been used in that way. And so just get started. And if that means, you're switching some nootropic to lion's mane or, your immune supplement to reishi or whatever, great. That door opens and it's just wonderful to see how many other things begin to shift, both within the body, but also behavioral choices. It's like when you make that mental agreement with yourself that you're now taking an adaptogen every day or whatever your protocol is, but that like really solid, healthy action for yourself, you start to not want, that fast food you're eating or that 4th cup of caffeine. And I don't know how much of that is placebo or that's like the body really trying to work with you and for you. But I see this over and over again.
Yeah, when people start to feel better, they make different choices. So that's kind of the goal of even what I do with my practice is like, let's get you feeling better quick. And oftentimes it's in our very specific practice that I'm the medical director for, it's like we do a lot of hormone replacement as well. But it's amazing how when you get a guy or a gal, even anybody to feel better, the decisions they make are just totally different because how many decisions do we make based off of wanting to feel better? And it's some kind of a crutch. It's some kind of like an instant feel good fix. It's like somebody reaching for a cigarette or a dip of tobacco or whatever it is that they're just trying to feel a little bit better in the moment. And if you get them to feel better, it's like, wow. So why not start with the focus on adding something instead of taking something away? And then as you start feeling better, then you can make those extra decisions. So let's talk about your shopping guide. I'm really excited about the shopping guide piece. Everyone loves to go shopping, right? In our culture, we're all about like, what can I go get right now? So let's do it.
There's a lot of marketing riffraff out there. And this shopping guide, it's really meant to be a way to help people receive the benefits from these. And the only way to do that is if you're selecting the right thing. And so you have to be careful of several different marketing tactics that a lot of brands are putting on there, whether it's like totally using the wrong part of a species. So making sure you're actually getting what you want to get. That's a huge thing. It's like the medicinal compounds are located in, we call it like the power hub. So for turmeric, it's the root, right? Cacao, it's the bean. Moringa, it's the leaf, right? So you want to actually make sure you're getting where the medicine is.
Huge. I wouldn't want to be taking the leaves of the ashwagandha plant, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Like, I want the root, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Ashwagandha is in the tomato, eggplant family. And so it has these big, beautiful red fruits. That's not where the medicine is. It's in the root. And so, yeah, you've got to know what you're getting, making sure it's the right species. I see this all the time. Like someone calling a supplement like ginseng is a big one, right? Because there's so many different ginsengs that we've used that aren't even part of the ginseng family. Siberian ginseng, European ginseng, American ginseng, Asian ginseng, knowing this is actually the right species. This is the right part of the species. From there, making sure it's bioavailable, that your body can actually use it. This is super important with mushrooms, right? We know they have to be extracted for our bodies to use them. Otherwise, it's just like eating some fiber. Not necessarily bad. You're just not getting the benefits. are they bioavailable, right? Has that ashwagandha been extracted? Are those fat soluble compounds available? The dose, right? I think so many people, cannabis has really skewed people's minds where it's like, oh, this ashwagandha gummy has like 5 milligrams in it. Cool. It's like, no, you need at least 500 milligrams. Yeah, the average consumer, they'll buy a product or maybe they're back to back in a grocery store or on Amazon. They're like, cool, these both say organic and plant-based and gluten-free and whatever terms are used. But it's like, is it the right thing? Is it the right part of the plant? Is it bioavailable? Is it the right dose? And like, is it clean? Like, what's the quality of it? Is it organic? Is it third-party tested? Like, where is it coming from in the world? Like, has it been lab grown or is it actually wild harvested out in nature where it developed these compounds that make it really medicinal? So the shopping guide it's like a checklist. We do give options. Like, these are great places if you want to buy in big box stores or health food stores or online. But I really, instead of just giving people the keys to the castle and like, buy this, it's really, no, I want you to learn for yourself how to be a smart consumer, because there's always going to be more brands and, new companies coming on the market. And so if you can then know how to navigate, then you can actually reap the benefits. And that's what I care about. That's why the shopping guide is there.
Yeah, you're giving them a compass. You know what I mean? They have to navigate themselves. I think that one thing that really I try to explain and people really get it when I tell them, you know what, the most expensive thing you'll ever buy is something that doesn't work.
Totally.
Right? So if you're going to
Totally.
go for benefits, go for the time tested, doctor recommended, the herbalist recommended, go for that stuff. You pay them for their specific instructions, right? And for their recommendations on this. And who has more education in the mycelium realm than you and Tero? You know what I mean? It's like, you guys have been in this for so long and your products are super easy to, I'm just putting in a plug for your products personally, because it's like, yeah, because they're in packages, they're ready, they're accessible. And so in the modern world, it's really easy for someone to go, oh, I'm at my office, I'm feeling like I need something right now. It's like, well, what's going to work? It's like, well, we know the Four Sigmatic brand is been around, it's been tested. And so they can go and they can get a packet of, whether it's reishi cacao or they can get some mushroom coffee that they can make in the office or whatever else. And it's just nice that there are products that we can trust.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's some awesome brands. And I would say there's many more that are sketchy, but there is a handful of people that are doing it right. And the more we can support them, not only are we not wasting our money, right? We're getting these benefits. And then as the consumers, we are really guiding where the industry can go. We're saying, this is, I'm putting my dollar as my like investment in this way of providing the ingredients. That's what I agree. That's what I want to see more of. And those things will grow. I like to think of that with all of our dollars. It's like, even if we're at the grocery store or at a farmer's market, it's like, oh, this is my investment into what you're doing. This is my endorsement. You keep going. I'm giving my hard-earned money to you so that this can become bigger and a greater impact in whatever sphere it is. So yeah, thinking about that with our health is so critical. Or else, as you say, most expensive supplement is the one that doesn't work.
Right, exactly. In there, you also talk about creating routines. We have to create healthy autopilots for ourselves, right? If we're going to do things where we can actually just set something up where we don't have to think about it, this is the routine that we follow. And so how can adaptogens be a part of somebody's routine?
So critical. Medicine doesn't work if you don't take it. It's really hard to start new routines, especially new routines that involve ingredients that are foreign or this weird root or this random mushroom you've never heard of. Routines are everything. I think the way to really experience these and their benefits is long-term. As you said, they don't work like a magic pill. You can't just take them once and then have the benefits. They work over time. You have to take them consistently. And in order to do that, it means building them into our routine. And so I always encourage people to look at their life, whether they think they have routines or not. Like, what are things you won't give up? Maybe that's your morning cup of coffee, or it's something you do. It can be something you ingest or also an activity. Like, this is really important for my life. And in that, right, we have it stacked. We add the functional adaptogen or the functional mushroom to our cup of coffee. Or instead of maybe that evening routine of wine, you're swapping it out with another nervous system relaxing beverage that's still allowing you to to engage in that routine, but that's setting you up for success long term, right? It isn't that crutch anymore. The routines are everything. If we want these to work, we have to use them consistently, and that means we have to build them into our routine.
Even if it's something as simple as like your Netflix routine in the evening, if somebody's watching shows in the evening, it's like, okay, well, what can you add to that? And also, I think another thing is I have a big thing with supplements. Most people don't take them if they're stuck in the cupboard. So if you're trying to start a new routine, put them on the counter, right where you see them, right where you sit down, right where you have your meals or where you commune with others, like put them right there. So then they're a part of it.
I love that.
I love what you guys have done here. I think this is really, really neat because this is a good, solid educational thing. And it's a fun read. There's a lot of, inspiration in there and exciting things. You don't just bog us down with information, right? That's not what it's meant for. Like you said, there's textbooks out there. So
yeah, my brother-in-law hates reading books. Sorry, Connor, little plug. He only likes reading articles. And I caught him, I gave him a copy and he stayed out until like 11:30 p.m. on the couch reading the book. And I was like, what are you doing? I've never seen him read a book. He's like, it doesn't feel like a book. Like this is so quick. I'm bouncing around. And so, yeah, that was like the best compliment ever. I'm like, great. Okay. Keep going.
Yeah. So great. What's next on the list? When does the book launch?
The book launches September 27th.
September 27th. Awesome. Okay, great. Oh, this is so exciting. So we can pre-order on Amazon, I would imagine. Where else can we pre-order? Are you guys selling it on your website or?
We created our own website. It's called healingadaptogens.com. So it's just for the book. Pretty much available anywhere books are sold. So Ecotopia is that what it's called? I don't know. Barnes and Noble, bookstore.com, Amazon, wherever you buy books, it should be there.
Thanks for continuing to change the world. Through everything that you do, you touch something and you make it a little bit better. And especially in this mushroom space and the adaptogen space, you guys at Four Sigmatic have really done amazing work. I commend you on it because it's hard to find really, really good stuff and fun people to carry the message. So you and Thero do that very well. So thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you so much. Such an honor. Thanks for all the support. Really, really grateful.
Yeah, I love you guys. So we'll have you back on the podcast at some point in the future. I wish you guys all the best with this book launch. Try to get this out there for as many people as possible. So let's change some lives.
Right on. Cheers.
All right. Cheers. Hey, wasn't that an awesome episode? I know you guys probably got something out of that. Really enjoy Danielle's energy and what she puts out into the universe. She is definitely making people better one at a time. So I really enjoy her education and her taking time out of her busy schedule to be on my podcast today and to share her knowledge with all of you. If you guys really enjoyed this one, let Danielle know. I'm going to put a contact there for her. Pick up some of their products. Just give them a try. This is not what this podcast was about. It was about the book, but I am going to put a plug in for Four Sigmatic. I love their products. So I like the new mushroom coffee creamers that they have. So they've got a few different coffee creamers. Those are just phenomenal. It's a nice way to jazz up your coffee in the morning. And in the evening, chill. There's a chill line of products they have on their page, foursigmatic.com. You can go on their website and you can actually just pick up some of the products that way, or you can go to your local grocery and pick some up that way. So if you got a Sprouts in town or a Natural Grocers or a Whole Foods, you can find their products there. So I hope you guys really enjoyed today's episode. Stick around because next episode, number 80, is going to be fantastic as well. So I hope you guys have a phenomenal week and weekend. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Rise Again podcast. Hey, thanks for listening to the Rise Again podcast. Great episode, hey? You know what? I really love interviewing people and I love getting people on who have things to share with the world. So if you have a really cool guest that you'd like to get on the podcast, email me and I will do my best to get them on the show. I hope you guys have a phenomenal week and stay tuned for the next episode of the Rise Again podcast.